Hello everyone and welcome to Hutch's Garage for episode 22 of my 1954 International Harvester Farmall Super MTA tractor restoration. In this episode I rebuild the engine oil pump. Please note that this video footage was made earlier in the year.
What I'm going to do now is work on the oil pump. We're going to take it apart and see what's wrong with it, if anything. So let me get the camera down here. First thing you gotta do, this is a floating oil pickup, and all you gotta do is pull the pin out. I've already bent that open. I've also cleaned this thing pretty much so far, and you can see this top part of the can here is mashed down a little bit. And when I pulled this off, or when I opened up the oil pan and looked in here, this was completely covered. The screen was completely covered over. And so what I did is take this piece off to clean it. And to do that, what I did, I started working on this back side. I took a sharp, like an awl, put in these little grooves right here and spread them open a little bit with this, plus hitting on it with a hammer like that. And I had to work a couple of them like that. Actually, I tried to loosen all of them up a little bit. So let's go ahead and take this back off. That's that. But like I say, this was completely covered. I don't know how it was getting any oil at all. The only thing I could figure was that it's creating a slight vacuum, and this would sealed up against this to somewhat. This would have pushed down on the screen and maybe let oil in. Anyways, so this is how I found it after I cleaned it up. I cleaned this a little bit. This wasn't all that dirty on the outside. There's a relief spring pressure valve. It slides up and down here, and a spring right here. So what I want to do is I think I'm going to take this bolt off first. And before I open it up, I want to show you something here. And this must be something that's common to these tractors. See how you can hear it? This shaft is worn in here. And looking in here, I can see the shaft move a great bit. So we'll have to deal with that. I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to do. So I'm going to take this bolt off first. I'm going to put another one in here to help ease this open as I take this thing apart. There's only 4 bolts. I'm using a 9/16 inch wrench. And to back it off slowly with that spring pressure, I'm going to put this bolt in here and pull the nut down. That'll be enough. Put it down on the case. So I'll loosen the other bolts. That does not want to go in there. So let's see if we can get her. Can you get a good bite on this wrench? Nope. There, I think I got some movement. Here, there, the wrench slipped. Well, there we go. Man, there's not much clearance at all in this. can buy these new. The problem is they are not cheap. I mean, about $495 I saw on the internet yesterday. I'm not sure if I want to go that route to get this back to like new. And that was for a rebuild. There may be a new one, but I'll have to check again. You can buy used ones for $150, but who knows, you may get one just like this. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and try to get this bolt out. That's out. Okay. First looks, I don't see where I can't feel any. It's perfectly smooth, so that part's good. There's the relief valve and the spring. This really needs to be replaced. Wow. I'm not sure if I can find one or not. If you can see it, it's worn flat. See where it's worn? Worn flat right there. Clean this off. What I'm going to do is get a magic marker. I'm going to get a magic marker and mark across the gears so I can get them meshed back together. That'll also indicate the bottom side. So the next step will be trying to get this shaft off. I'll have to work on getting this pin out. So, alright, you can see that I've marked for these gears so I can get them back to the same spot. I did a clearance check between the gears and the body as shown in the book. It's supposed to be between 3 and 5 thousandths. Okay, I can get the 3 in there. I've already done this, so what I ended up with, I could not get, I did it on both gears. I could get 5 thousandths in there. It's kind of tight, and the 6 thousandths would not go in on both sides. Anyway, so that's 6 thousandths there. So that's what it did. So that's actually where it's supposed to be. So the problem is that is worn. We'll have to see what we can do about that. So I'm going to go ahead and take this idler gear out. There we go. So that's out, and that's what it looks like. Teeth, you know, they show wear, but I don't think it's terrible, honestly. Now what I plan to do is get this pin out of here. Put this over the edge. Turn it up like that. I've got a drift punch about the same size or slightly smaller than what I believe the pin diameter to be. Alright, there we go. Now where this gear comes off, I may have to get a puller to get it off. And it doesn't move by hand. So I'll have to get a small puller to get that off. Alright, so I did get the drive gear off, and my pullers would not grab underneath the gear enough to pull it out. So what I did, after I got that pin out, which you saw, I got a brass draft and hit on the end of this shaft. Now the problem with doing that is as you go down, you start reaching where this Woodruff key is, okay? And you'll start banging into the top here. So what you got to do is put washers between this part of the body and underneath the gear. So as you start panning down, you keep building up washers to get that thing out. All right. Sticking the shaft in up here, it appears the cast iron is not worn all that bad. It's mainly, well, it is, most of this wear is on the shaft here and down here at the bottom. You can see the rings here. So all I need, I think, is a new shaft. I've got a mark on here, and I've got double marks on here. I put the marks where this keyway is, right there. That way I could set this aside and probably not rub. If I rub the marks off here, I know it goes back to the keyway. So I'm ready to take out the last piece of this oil pump, which is the pin that's right there. Use a small punch. It's not, this one's not in there that tight. Doesn't look like it's pounded over. So light taps and it's moving. Alright, there it is. It has a slight bend in it if you look at it real close, I guess for friction. I don't know whether that's on purpose or that's how it's made. And I'll probably have to do the same thing. I'll put it in a vise, put some softeners underneath the gear, and use my brass drift like this and pound this shaft out and away. So that's where we stand on this particular pump. The spring is the biggest worry I've got, where to get that. The shaft, we'll see. I think I got a friend of mine that can either machine me a new one or we'll build it back up. I'm not sure. A new shaft would be the best, but you've got to put keyways here, a hole, and a keyway down here also. So that's the tough part. So here we are back with the oil pump. The shaft, in the last video I showed the wear on this shaft in this area up here very severe, and it was probably close to a 1/16 inch or more of wear. It was worn down here also, just slightly less. However, the body was in good shape. It had not worn hardly at all. So I ordered a 5/8 inch shaft. It came 3 foot long, and it's made out of 1045 carbon steel. It's a good machinable material. So I took it to a friend's house who's got a milling machine and a lathe, and I bought a new keyway cutter. This keyway is 5/32 by 5/8 of an inch, and so I bought a new keyway cutter for him to use, and we made a new shaft. We pinned this one on, and this had to be pressed on. This fits so tight, and put the pin back in. And the bluing here was used for some clearance issues I had to make sure it would turn properly. So what we're going to do now is measure the end body clearance, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to put this shaft in here first, and as you can see, there's hardly any wiggle at all, and there's no wiggle once I get it in here. In other words, right here, just very slight clearance. And we had a mark to put the gears back. Got 2 marks on this. Should line up with a single mark on this end. Oop. So there we go. That's how it's lined up. And the book shows, there's a couple ways to do this. You can do it more than one way. The book shows taking plastic gauge and spreading it across the gears from this end all the way to this end. Put the gasket size in that was in there before and bolt it down tight, and then take it apart and measure it. So that's what I'm planning to do. When I got my gasket set with my engine gasket kit, this is the new gasket that came with the engine kit. And after measuring it against the original gasket, which was in there, it's very thin. It's only paper thin. That is 3/1000ths of an inch. Okay? I measured this. This is 10 to 11 thousandths, which is going to be too much. So what I did, I made a paper gasket this size here, and this measures 3/1000ths of an inch. And what you want is 3/1000 to 5/1000ths of an inch clearance when you bolt it down between the gear faces and the body here. So let's cut off a piece the right length. So I need to go from here, oh, to about there. Lay that part aside and try to get this out. There we go. That was in two pieces. So we'll lay some there. Oh, I need a little bit of oil. Put that piece there. Another small piece there. I'm not sure. All right. And I'm not putting the relief valve in at this time. So I got these bolts tight on the pump, and then I'm going to take it apart now. And when I come back, we'll take the cover off. Just taking these bolts out. See if we got any. Yes, we got a little bit of crush. All right. Put that gasket over there. It's around 6,000. It's supposed to be between 3 and 5 thousandths. Let me double check that. But definitely I need to use a paper thin gasket like what was in there before. I don't think I got these bolts completely 100% tight. I'll definitely get them tighter when I go back. There is no clearance between the body and the gear, so basically the thickness of the clearance is really the gasket. So what I'll do next is clean this up, get that plastic gauge off, and we'll assemble the pump for the final time. So I've got the pump mounted in the vise with some softeners, holding it fairly steady there, and ready to put the shaft with the drive gear in. I've already put a little bit on here, but I use this ultra slick engine assembly lube to pre-lube the shaft and also the base of the gear down here. So let's drop the shaft in. Not really drop it, but slowly put it in. Use it down here. Get it to the bottom. And that'll probably close up some clearances while it's in here. But you don't want to get too much oil that it makes it too tight and that pump won't turn. So I've done the same by putting oil on the shaft and oil on the base of this driven gear. So line up the two marks with the keyway right there and put this gear in. So that way the gear is going back the same way it came apart. I've got a new spring for the relief valve. This is the original spring, and you can see it's worn flat here where it's been vibrating or going up and down against the side of the wall of the cast iron there, and that weakens it some. So to be sure it's got the proper spring K factor and everything, I ordered a new spring from Bates Corporation. So this is it right here, and you can see it's just slightly about a spring thickness taller. So I put that in to the relief valve cup there. Just a little bit of oil on it. Drop that in there. Now, the gasket is next, and I've got oil all over it. But that won't hurt because it's going to get oil anyway. I've got in the proper position, I've got it marked which side's up. The next step will be getting this compressed and line up the bolt holes. So I've got this carriage bolt with a nut on it, and that'll help drive it down. So this is where the spring goes on the bottom part of the housing. So I'll put that there. Make sure that lines up. Take this long bolt, and what I'll do is start working this bottom cover on. First got to get that bolt started some. Probably should have got two. So what I'll do, got my wrench. So I'll start working this down close. I can also go fairly quick by squeezing it like this, and then use the wrench. Let me get you over here. So back at the pump, I've tightened up all 4 of these bolts where they need to be. I'm setting this in a cradle that's actually very close to the diameter of this end of the pump. And what I'm going to do with it like this, I'm going to put the drive gear on the end of the shaft. So we're ready for that. As you can see, it turns freely by hand, which is what you want. So we got to put a Woodruff key right here. And it's a snug fit. The gear will slip on. Alright. And then we have a pin that goes in. This is actually a tapered pin. It's slightly narrow on this end and thicker at this end. And I've got to find, that's the narrow end. So it goes this way. I'm going to use a brass drift to drive it home. Alright, that's snug, but that's not where I want to leave it. What I want to do is pin that end of the pin over, so I'll lay it here in this cupped out cradle, we'll call it. So when we hit on the pin, we won't be hitting on the gear and driving the pin out through the gear. And I've got a ball peen hammer here. Because of the gear teeth there, you gotta be careful. Alright. That's bent over pretty good. I think I'll take another hit right here. So that's swelled, that should not move. And you can leave a little bit. I'm going to check it in the engine to make sure the clearance is good. And if I have to, I can file these off and make them smaller. So that concludes that part of the pump. Now one thing I want to tell you, before I put this in the engine, I will put oil into the pump, at least, and coat the gears real well. I'm not sure how much will stay in there, probably not much, because it'll come out the inlet when it turns right side up. You can also put a little oil in here. This is the discharge area of this particular pump that distributes it into the big main oil gallery that goes to the mains, all the mains, that feeds the connecting rod bearings, that feeds the cam bearings, and through a slot in the cam bearing it feeds the rocker arms. So, and there's various other things. You got an idler gear that gets oiled, the governor gets oiled. So this pump puts out a lot of oil volume. So that concludes this part of the pump. Next thing I could do, I'll put the screen on. And all you got to do there, I'll put this back on, this cover piece. It goes on right here like this. I'll have to bend these tabs over. And there's a cotter key that goes in there. These are the limiting tabs that are on this thing. So it goes on like this, and that limits it. And what keeps it in there is a cotter pin. So I got a new cotter pin. If I leave it, okay, and I want you to put that in there. That keeps it in there. I'll bend these over. So I got to finish putting this back together. And that's a floating pickup for the oil pump.
That's all the time we have for in this episode. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Please continue to join me for the next episode as I restore and rebuild this 1954 International Harvester Farmall Super MTA tractor.